Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a new edition of the Quarantine Concert Series. I'm your host, Kabir Segal. This is show number 17 in, I think, 15 days. So we're doing this every night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and on the weekends, we have special matinee showings, of which this is one. Just a few points to start off. Just why are we doing this? Obviously, we're going through a national emergency, a pandemic, where the guidelines are to practice physical distancing, not necessarily social distancing, because they're trying to be social here online. So this has really severely affected those in the creative community. Artists, producers, engineers, anyone connected to live events has seen their way of life kind of altered. And we want to make sure that the gigs are continuing to flow. So this is sort of an initiative. So thank you so much for your support and for tuning in whenever you can. If you're an artist who wants to get on the show, please hit me up on Instagram and Facebook. Right now, we have a long waiting list. We're trying to get everyone on the show we can. So I appreciate your patience as we sort of move through this. And just how you can watch us, we're live on Facebook, uh, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. I want special thanks to the folks at LinkedIn for enabling this live broadcast. There's not that many music broadcasts on LinkedIn, so thank you, LinkedIn, for making this happen. And also IGTV. So we're all over the internet, breaking the internet, and we're trying to spread the love of music from amazing artists, just like the artists we have today. And I'm really glad to be introducing you to. Some of you already know Mr. G. He's an incredible artist, songwriter, performer, writer, multi-talented individual. I've known him for several years now, and he writes and creates music and produces music at the highest level. So please welcome to the show, Mr. G. Welcome.
Thanks, Kabir. Great to be on with you.
Thank you. So tell me first, how has the pandemic affected you? Have you had to cancel many gigs? What are you doing personally?
Well, yeah, everything got canceled. Just in the last couple of weeks, I was supposed to be, um, and I'll preface this by saying, obviously, we're all in the same boat, so no pity party whatsoever. But specifically, like last week, I just had a new children's book come out. I was going to be on a book tour and performing in Miami. Then I had gigs in Palm Beach. This weekend we were going to be performing in Massachusetts. Next weekend I was about to leave for California to play the 150th anniversary of Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and then on and on and on. So I went from being a busy guy to being unemployed, but that's we're all in that same boat.
Yeah, how are you passing the time? What are you doing at home? Are you getting your to-do list done?
Well, honestly, it's just been pivoting to trying to figure out what I can do to, um, contribute to kids and families. Because what I've been doing for 10 years since I transitioned from being a performer, songwriter for grown-ups is writing and playing for kids and being on the road all the time. So it's really been a real touring life. So needless to say, it's a moment to transition. And so what I've been working on, first of all, writing a lot of songs, producing here in my studio, but also developing with my team something called Mr. G TV, which we're going to launch next week. Um, and essentially just trying to provide a way to be of service and contribute to people who are isolated all over the world.
What is Mr. GTV?
So it's going to be a weekly TV series hosted here. But one of the things, and so what I'm talking to you from the woods of Western Massachusetts. So when I'm not on the road, I come back to this sort of bucolic place in the countryside. Uh, but as you know, and friends watching, a lot of what I do is collaborate with musicians from all over the world. So one of the things, I was feeling a little lonely and honestly like out of touch, besides being really worried for my friends and just concerned for planet our species. But what I started doing over the last week, which has made me feel much more connected, was I started writing some songs here relating to it. One I can share with you just a little bit right now, and then reaching out and collaborating with friends to play their tracks. So like there's one I just started writing a song called, obviously everyone's thinking about washing your hands. So I one day came up with this idea of like, everyone across the land, we're all together washing our hands. Everywhere across the land, we're all together washing our hands. You got it, you got it. So I tracked that up, and that's the kind of thing typically I would have had like a bunch of people come to my studio. We would have done it together, but you got your Purell. Well done, well done. Oh man, I'm losing you. I've lost my connection to you here.
Oh, okay. I said that this should become the official anthem of your Purell, your song you just wrote.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started tracking that up. I did a whole chorus of hand claps and guitars and this and that, and got it to a place with lots of vocals, but just working on my own. And then reached out to Jose Valentino, who's a great friend of mine based in Florida. We've collaborated a lot in the studio and also toured together. Jose played bass and keys, and my friend William Johnson in North Carolina added some percussion and his kids. So to answer the Mr. G.TV, what that's going to be is like a live concert from my studio, but like a multi-camera shoot, but also cutting in interviews with collaborators, both musical, but otherwise, a lot of the work I do, I in addition to music, as you know, I'm a writer, so we'll have writers and illustrators, children's authors and illustrators, as well as a lot of the work that I've done for years now is activism around the environment. So we'll also have pre-recorded interviews and also live streams like what we're doing, conversations with environmental activists and kids and families who are trying to cope with this and doing something that's innovative and progressive and uplifting. So more to come, but that's the gist of it.
That sounds awesome. I think creative people are wired, when there's a difficult situation, some people get angry or disappointed. I think creative people get busy. And I think that's one way of, I don't know if it's coping or just one way of just sort of feeling like you're part of the solution. So that's very exciting that you're starting this initiative, and I'll be sure to tune in and happy to support as well. Great initiative.
Thanks, man.
What would you like to begin your performance with tonight or today?
Well, since I wasn't able to quite do the book tour that I was in the middle of, I'll start with a song called Señorita Mariposa. Well, so it's got a couple books out. This one here's the cover. It's called Señorita Mariposa. Shout out to my friend Marcos Arnada Rivero, who's a brilliant illustrator from Mexico City. This is a book about the migration of the monarch butterfly from Canada, the United States, to the mountains of Michoacan in Mexico. And last year at this time, I was with Marcos. We went to see the butterflies. It was really one of the most moving experiences in my life. We climbed up to this mountain in silence, and then when the sun came up and warmed their wings, millions of butterflies took to the sky. And just in this moment where we're isolated and just trying to think about where the inspiration is. One thing I've taken heart in is what I've been reading about how, of course, global pollution levels are down and to what extent that benefits other species on Earth. And as I'm sure you're aware, it's gotten a lot of publicity happily, but the monarch butterfly is in grave danger. So anything we can do to preserve and protect that habitat. But I'll play you the song that inspired the book here. Señorita mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Señorita mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Te quiero a ti. Little butterfly, you just caught my eye. Little butterfly, flying through the sky. I'm so happy you're alive. Con tus alas preciosas, cuando te posa en la rosa. Your pretty yellow wings, they make me wanna sing. Señorita mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Señorita mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Te quiero a ti. Cada vez que pienso en ti, me siento muy feliz. I can't believe how far you go, all the way to Mexico. Señorita mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Señorita mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Te quiero a ti. Little butterfly flying through the sky. I'm so happy you're alive.
Yeah, that sounds
Thank you.
awesome, man. That
Thanks,
sounds
man.
awesome. Let me get this thing going here.
Is that when I do
Yeah.
something like that?
They love you, man. You might have to start crowd surfing. Hey, that's beautiful. Tell me about why you wanted to be a children's book author. I know that's kind of a new chapter in your career, our newest chapter in your career. How did you make that move?
It actually something I grew up with. My mother wrote an illustrated children's book. So, but having said that, I never thought I'd be, even though I've been in this now making music for kids for quite a while, I never saw that coming. And so that just getting into children's music was an organic and wonderful evolution in my musical career. But then once I was into it, the idea of having some of the songs be adapted to books, that was part of my consciousness because I'd really grown up with it. And so, over time, it was clear that some of the songs had a narrative arc or a character that lent themselves to being adapted. And now that I'm in this, actually I just signed a contract to have several more books published. And what I've realized is that going forward, I'm going to write the stories as their own entity, like transitioning from a song. Like, for example, what I just played you with Señorita Mariposa, it started with the chorus, Señorita Mariposa, right? But for a children's book, that's not what you would do, right? So it took some adaptation, which wasn't to get it, because it's a related, parallel, but different art form. And it's been wonderful. I mean, just to broaden into a different type of media and having this really gratifying experience now where some people are discovering the work originally through the books and then finding out about the music and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
So it feels
I didn't
good.
realize we had that in common too. I write, my mom writes children's books. I write them together with
Yeah.
my mother. So it's really cool when you have that running through the family. And what
Yeah.
I like about your literature is, there's this whole movement about we need more diversity in children's literature.
Mhm.
And it's so powerful that you're teaching different languages. You're bringing in teaching about the environment because these stories we learn as kids, they really shape our views and they stay with us for sometimes our entire lives.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about some of your mom's books? It'd be cool to know about them. And
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So shout out to my mom down in Sarasota. Hope she's staying inside. I have to keep scolding her to just take it easy and stay put. But my mother wrote and illustrated, I don't know, maybe 30 books. Some of my personal favorites, one was called Happy Winter. I was particularly interested in that one because that has a great recipe for a chocolate cake, which is like something to do in a snowstorm. There's a really touching one called A Special Trade, which is the friendship of a little girl and an elderly man in her neighborhood. There's a one that I loved called The Witch Who Was Afraid of Witches. There's a great one about a cat called Beanie. So yeah, she had a long and distinguished career in that field.
yeah, what does she think about? She must be very proud of you that you've written yourself.
Yeah, they've been super supportive, and I think it's a way for us to relate in the sense that like my background prior to kids music really was like solo singer songwriter, but also like in rock bands and funk. She was like a complete full on classical person. So the music side, particularly anything that wasn't with classical or folk, was hard for her to relate to. But of course, this is in her wheelhouse, the children's
Yeah.
book stuff. So that's been nice for us.
I want to talk about your career as a singer-songwriter, maybe in the next block. What would you like to perform for us now?
Well, I'll play a song called Patas en el aire. So that means paws in the air. And like I said, my studio is here in the woods of Western Massachusetts. And it's called Black Bear Studios because truly right outside the door here, sometimes black bears come walking through the backyard. I've got my dog Josie, who some of you know well, who's whenever we can bring her on the road with us. And so Josie's out there with the bears and the deer and the rabbits. So this is a bilingual song really about celebrating nature. So everyone's got to get their patas en el aire, the paws in the air. Manos arriba! Patas en el aire, patas en el aire, saltando en el bosque, con tus patas en el aire. I live in the woods with the black bears. We share the same water, we share the same air with the deer and the rabbit, the fox and the birds. It's a beautiful life, it's a beautiful world. Patas en el aire, patas en el aire, saltando en el bosque, con tus patas en el aire. Put your paws in the air, put your paws on the ground, jump up and touch the sky. Now turn around, put your paws in the air, your paws on the ground. Shout out loud, make a joyful sound. Patas en el aire, patas en el aire, saltando en el bosque, con tus patas en el aire. Vivo en el bosque con los osos negros. Ellos son mis amigos, ellos son mis maestros. Me enseñan a vivir en armonía con la luna, en armonía con el sol y la naturaleza. Patas en el aire, patas en el suelo, con todos tus amigos y las manos hacia el cielo. Patas en la noche, patas en el día, patas de amor, patas de alegría. Patas en el aire, patas en el aire, saltando en el bosque, con tus patas en el aire. I live in the woods with the black bears. We share the same water, we share the same air with the deer and the rabbit, the fox and the birds. It's a beautiful life, it's a beautiful world. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. I am reflecting the applause that you're getting from all over the internet. That was a beautiful song. I'd like to read you some of the praise you're getting. On your previous song, Patricia Cortez, who's the Deputy Consul General of Mexico in Salt Lake City, she says, love the monarch-butterfly connection between Canada, the US, and Mexico. It's an important thing to be discussing right now. And have you toured in Utah? Have you played in Salt Lake area?
Believe it or not, I have not. I've been, yeah. So let's talk. Well, let's make that happen.
Patricia,
we won't be quarantined forever.
Yeah, let's get Ben out to Salt Lake and play a gig. It'd be great to host me even at the consulate. Dawn in France says, this is absolutely beautiful and adds joy and discovery. Have you been out to France? Have you toured in France?
I have not. We've shot some video in France. There's a video called "Gonna Take My Hat," and that one we recently played in England. We've played a lot all over Latin America, but not France. But in that video, if you check it out, it goes New York, London, Paris, home, I'm gonna take my hat wherever I go. And there's a lot of footage at the Eiffel Tower and along the Seine and stuff like that. So we've shot some
Yeah,
video, but we've got to get to Paris to play.
totally. When you write your songs, do you think in Spanish or English first? How do you choose the language that you want to express your song in?
That's a great question. I write a lot just in English, some bilingual, and some just in Spanish. Um, and I wish I could say that there's a real method to the madness, but there isn't. I think it's just sometimes, um, for me, obviously every writer has their own methodology and way of working. For me, it's almost always derived initially just from something where I'm just fooling around on the guitar and just get a little groove, something like this. And I for better or worse, I'm writing all the time, and so my phone is just packed voice memos with ideas and little grooves, most of which I never get around to. But something will happen like that, and then a melodic rhythm like ba ba da 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 da, ba ba da da da. So I think probably what it is actually, I haven't given it the thought, is like whatever language. It's almost like fitting a puzzle together. So I have that melody and that rhythm. When they come to me, it's solid, like that feels like that's what it's got to be. So then it's almost like finding the words that correspond to that rhythm. So I
Yeah,
think probably in that instance, the first thing was like, patas en el aire, and off from there.
yeah,
Sometimes though, honestly, it's really project based. Like if I'm in the middle of an album and it's a bilingual album, I'm in that headspace. So I'm thinking in both languages versus the
yeah.
most recent one I did was called Fireflies, and that's very much like more a rootsy Americana album. So when I was writing and producing that, I was just more in like the English language, uh, folky
Yeah.
Americana space. Yeah.
So about that, well, someone wants to ask, have you ever like used your voice memos and had an idea and like actually lost the memo and you're like, oh no, I lost that great idea.
I've had
Hey,
all sorts of technological tragedies, but so
yeah. So
yes.
the,
In
we're
a
all of
short
those.
answer is yes.
Yeah. Talk to me about, you said your first phase of your career, you were a singer-songwriter for adults. Um,
Hmm.
Talk to me about that chapter of your career and why you decided to make the transition to performing for kids.
Yeah, so I had a long career doing that, both as a solo artist and leading bands. Um, Ironically, we've ended up, well, as Mr. G, now playing a lot of the same types of venues that I did back in the day, like Hard Rock Cafe or Austin City Limits or Jazz Fest or Lollapalooza or something like that. So I, from when I was a little kid, I thought I wanted to be a musician. I went down that path. It never occurred to me that there was, we're living in this sort of renaissance of children's music right now, where there's so many people in our field creating wonderful work. But when I was a kid, I didn't know children's. It wasn't even on my radar. So all my heroes from the time I was a little kid, it was started like it was the Beatles or Joni Mitchell or Paul Simon and Tom Petty, whatever. That's what I aspired to, and got into lots of styles of music. And I did that for a long time, and it was really gratifying career. But ultimately, I got to a place where, well, interestingly, the last touring band I had, we had this sort of dual identity. So we would play the clubs and theaters and by night, but we had an educational alter ego called the Roots Music Collective. So we'd sometimes have these surreal experiences where we'd be, in a bar till 1 in the morning, and then at 9 the next day, we're in the cafeteria on the floor under the fluorescent lights playing to some kids. And that was a group where we taught kids about the roots of American music. And it was at a place where I'd always had this sort of idealistic vision from the time I was a kid. Like the musicians that I admired the most used their platform to do something larger in the world. And I was getting increasingly disenchanted with like the hipster indie rock life, let's call it. And when I started being in those contexts in the schools, which couldn't have been less glamorous. Like I said, just like in the gym or the cafeteria, I was immediately just so touched and moved by the energy of the children, and just how open and receptive, they're just sort of primal response and joy. So this is going back about 10 years now. I went back and got a master's in education, thinking that I was transitioning out of the music business and that I would make a big change and just become a classroom teacher. And that felt like more the kind of direct impact where I could just feel good every day about what I was contributing. And I did that for a little while, and started writing songs with my elementary school students. And that led to like playing birthday parties, local coffee shops where we live out in Northampton, Massachusetts. And this organic sort of word of mouth started to happen. And over the next couple of years, the gigs got wider in terms of the radius where we played, started being around New England and then up and down the East Coast. And I had to quit my job and just I got back on the road once again, like as a touring musician, but this time as Mr. G, and in a much more gratifying and really unexpected path in terms of feeling like, as you mentioned, like whether it's the multicultural element, the environmental element, bilingual, it just feels much more like the type of work I want to do in the world and the way I can use my interests and talents to communicate with kids and families.
Totally. Thanks for sharing about that. What would you like to play next?
Let me play you the song that inspired this book. This book just came out. It's called Laila Tov, Good Night. This one is Hebrew and English. And this is dedicated to the memory of my grandparents, Herman and Frieda Gundersheimer. This is really a refugee story. This is illustrated by a phenomenal artist from Israel. Interestingly, one of the things, talking, since we both have this shared experience as children's authors, I'm sure you've had the same experience in that one of the things that's so gratifying about it is seeing what artists do with your words and how they transform it. So in this instance, this song preceded the book, and it really was just written as a lullaby of a child appreciating nature. And then I'll tell you how it was transformed into really this refugee narrative for the book. It's been a long, beautiful day. The sun got tired and went away. The moon is rising big and bright. Now it's time to say goodnight. Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov to my sister and brother. Laila Tov to my father and mother. Laila Tov to the fish in the sea. Laila Tov to the birds in the trees. Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov. Good night, good night, good night. Good night, good night, good night. Sleep is coming to take me away. Dream of peaceful, happy days. The house is quiet, you're tucked in tight. Now it's time to say goodnight. Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov, Laila Tov.
Never gets old. um, they're still going, man. They love it. So,
Nice.
dude, that was so beautiful, so beautiful. I wanted to ask you
Thank you.
something. I love how you're blending, music and literature. How do you think about being an educator when it comes to your music? Because, there's probably a line between being like pedantic or didactic and like just being fun. So
Totally.
how do you navigate between that dynamic?
To me, I just really think about what it was that inspired me as a kid and still does. Like, I'd much rather learn from something funky and fun. Like, I think people learn better when it's obvious to say this, but given the sort of pedantic nature of the educational system, it's worth stating. Like, if people are engaged, if they're enjoying something, they're much more inclined to delve deep into it. And so I feel like music is this extraordinarily powerful tool that can be harnessed to, convey every type of emotion. But specifically, if we're talking about education and there's some lesson to impart, well, how do you do it? Like, for example, the washing your hands song that I've been working on, that's fresh in my mind. Just because I've been producing it the last couple of days. That's suddenly like a lesson that all over the globe we all need to be more mindful of and like do in a really consistent way.
Yeah.
It's also, we're of course aware of that because we've got a global pandemic. So, that's scary. So how do you turn that though into something so that it's fun? Right. So the idea of like everywhere, we'll release the song soon, but it starts with the hand claps because it's about your hands, but like make it catchy right off the bat. Like everywhere across the land, we're all together washing our hands. Everywhere across the land, we're all together washing our hands. Then, and we'll see. But like
You got some clave in
the
there?
groove is just like, what? Say what?
You put some clave in there? That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
So it goes from this 2 and 4. It does. It's the hands of the clave. So it
Yeah.
starts with the 2 and 4. Everywhere across the, all together washing our hands. Turn on the water, sprinkle on the soap, dance around in circles, do the rope-a-dope. So that's the kind of thing, So like right off the bat, like, and making it funky. So like. So it goes through the stuff you need to do when you're washing your hands. It talks about like turn on the water, scrub on the soap, but then I try to make it fun, like dance around in circles, do the rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
Watch the front and the back, your fingers and thumbs, at least 20 seconds, you're done. So, but make it like a rap and funky. And when you hear the produced track, it's got it sounds more like a James Brown track. We've got like
Yeah.
horn
I love
stabs
that.
and funky guitar and just a backbeat and the hand clapping clave. So that's an example of something where I'm very conscious. Like I want to do something here that's educational, that can be helpful to people, that can try to take something that could feel like an anxious chore into something that feels like a funky party. So
I love it. I love
that's
it. Speaking my
yeah.
language, man. Hey, did you see the Mr. Rogers movie or documentary?
I'm so embarrassed to say that I did not see it. I wanted to see it in the theater, and I
Mhm.
was on the road, and I kept trying to catch it, and I didn't. So now I've got to watch it just
Yeah.
at home.
I mean, when I think about his philosophy about being an educator, he really spoke
Yeah,
about, kind of adult issues to children, but in a voice that they could kind of relate with and that was empathetic. Um, how do you deal with complicated issues, or do you deal with like kind of intense issues that children have to go through sometimes? We don't often think like the fact that children have to face difficult circumstances, but they often do in their family lives. Have you had to write music or address some of these harder situations in a child's life?
well, the answer is yes, but I mean, in a larger sense, I feel like a big theme for me is the environmental component, and that's there's no more pressing issue. We can
Yeah,
we'll get through this pandemic, uh, but then on the backside of this, like, what are we doing to protect this one and only Earth that we all share? So that's an ongoing theme for me, which if you keep up with environmental news, environmental legislation, or lack thereof in this country, for example, it can be an extraordinarily depressing topic. But to the extent that like the next generation is just entering the world, and I want to sort of inspire them and try to enlist a degree of agency that they can feel, and optimism and activism. And also often it's like the children, if what we find with children's music, like the children get really engaged and they can teach the parents. That's what sometimes happens with the language acquisition, for example, but also with something like as simple as like turning off the lights or recycling or whatever it might be. But day to day, that's really the topic that oh well, that's a shot you're pulling up. So the last
you're an activist.
4 or 5 years.
That's
with Nancy Pelosi after this concert that we've been doing we've partnered with an incredible organization called Moms Clean Air Force, which is a 1 million member group of moms and kids from all 50 states under the umbrella of the Environmental Defense Fund. And talk about people who have a tough job. Like every day of the year, they're trying to lobby for progressive legislation to clean air and clean water, basically. But once a year, they have their big event in Washington called the Play-In. And so it starts in the morning. We play this concert and get everybody fired up. And then some politicians who are on the same side of the fence, like Nancy Pelosi last year or Cory Booker, speak. And then we all go up and talk to our representatives. So it's that kind of thing. Like for Moms Clean Air Force, for example, they've got a really tough job in terms of obviously legislation, but also just positive messaging. So to that extent, I can function, or I try to, as sort of an ambassador of optimism and joy around this stuff.
Wonderful, and it's amazing that our country's leaders are there and recognizing your work as well, because it's so important, you being an activist as well for the environment, a lot of these issues. What would you like to play next?
Well, I'll play the song called Mundo Verde, which means green world, since we're talking about this stuff. Quiero vivir en el mundo verde, quiero vivir en el mundo verde, quiero vivir en el mundo verde, I wanna live in a green world. Mountains and rivers, oceans and sky, a magical world so full of surprise. We've got to protect this planet of ours. Sing with me, children, wherever you are. Quiero vivir, quiero bailar, quiero vivir, quiero cantar. Quiero vivir en un mundo verde. Quiero vivir en un mundo verde. La luna la voz, tantos milagros por todos lados. La luna, el sol, el mar, la tierra. Hay que proteger la naturaleza. Quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde. I wanna live in a green world. Podemos cambiar el mundo. We can change the world. Todos juntos. We're together. Un planeta. One planet. Quiero vivir, quiero bailar, quiero vivir, quiero cantar, quiero vivir, quiero bailar, quiero vivir, quiero cantar. Cantar. Bailar. Saltar. So, 1, 2, 3. Quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde. I wanna live in a green world. Quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde. I wanna live in a green world. Quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde, quiero vivir en un mundo verde. I wanna live in a green world.
Yeah, we're living in Mr. G's world right now. If the world was Mr. G's world, we'd be in a better place. So this was a beautiful album, and I loved what you did with it. You also had some great collaborators on this record. Maybe talk about some of the people who you featured on the album.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much. Um, yeah, a lot of my heroes from the Latin world were on that. So Arturo Alfaro plays some
Never heard of
piano.
them.
You should check him out sometime, man. He's pretty
Yeah,
good.
right. Yeah.
Um, Oscar Stagnaro. Oscar is an incredible bass player. He's been running the Latin jazz department at Berklee College of Music for many years, and super famous for being the bass player with Paquito de Rivera and lots of other people. So um, my friend Lee Levin in Miami played some drums. Jose Valentino played incredible flute on the Son Patas en el Aire. On and on and on.
What was it like? I mean, were you in the studio with Arturo and Paquita? What was it like
Yeah.
sort of being in their presence?
Well, Arturo and I first collaborated on the album Los Animales, which is the one that won the Latin Grammy. So I've been a fan of Arturo's for a long time, and we got together several years before and recorded. So for this one, it was just like seeing an old friend, and so he played piano on several tracks, but we also came up in the moment with some interstitials on Mundo Verde, which is fun. Like you can hear Arturo letting out his like comedic side on the mic, which is separate from his virtuosity on the piano.
Yeah, he's a very sort of fun-loving individual.
Totally playful.
Yeah.
So we got a
And share with me about Paquito and working with Paquito. What was it like working with him?
I haven't worked with Paquito, but it was
Oh.
working with Oscar,
Oh,
the
sorry.
bass player, and no
Gotcha,
worries.
gotcha.
Yeah. But
Is there
yeah,
any
I mean,
dream
and I don't want anyone to feel slighted because there were so many amazing
No.
players on that album.
Yeah, and I work for the audience at home. I work a lot closely with Arturo, so for me it was
Yeah.
great to see him, exploring this other side of the music.
Yeah.
Who are the dream collaborators that someone out there will put it out into the universe that maybe if they watch, you would love to work with on a song or some kind of production?
It's funny. I mean, there's so many. But Paquito just came up yesterday because we were just talking. Jose and I have been working on this "Washing Your Hands" song, and Jose Valentino. If you haven't checked him out, you got to do that. He's a professor at the University of Florida, and truly like a virtuoso on several instruments, bass and flute and sax. But Jose's played with Paquito. Obviously my friend Oscar's played with, and I'm working on a new song that Paquito would sound great on. So that was a conversation just from last night. In the Latin world, I'd love to do something with Angelique Kidjo. I'd love to work with, then I have different. I mean, man, that's a long list to go down.
Yeah. Well, Emily, if you're watching, who works at Angelique's nonprofit, please let's hook Ben up and make this happen.
I've been
Yeah.
working. The album I'm working on right now is, the reason I mentioned Angelique is kind of like I'm doing a couple children's things now and a grown-up thing, which is more like rootsy singer-songwriter back to what I did in the past. But I'm doing one right now, which is kind of like a world music album for kids. The reason I think of Angelique, so I've been recording a lot and with a friend of mine named Massamba Diop, who's a great talking drum master from Senegal.
Wow.
A lot of people have got to know Massamba because he did the soundtrack for Black Panther. That's him, but he has toured forever with Baba Mal and recently with Mumford and Sons. But we've been friends for a while, and so starting to work with. I've done a lot with the Latin community, but now starting to work with some more African musicians. So
Going global, Mr. G around the world. I love it. Do you have a title, or do you have a sense of when that'll come out, or what's the current state of that project? And
that's coming together. And now I've got more time, so I've actually been digging into it because here I am at home. So I've got a couple titles. I'll bounce them off you later.
All right, sounds good. That's very exciting. You always have something sort of in the mix, and you also have you're working on a new children's book, right? As well.
Yeah, a couple of those in the works too. Yeah.
I love it. You're very prolific. You have albums, you have you have books, you have a TV show. So like this man is working. and putting us all to shame. So maybe you could sing one more for us if you like. We'd love to hear one more.
Sure. Let me think.
By the way, if you have a question at home for Mr. G, feel free to drop a comment. We're getting a lot of love on LinkedIn and also on Facebook. Donna Scott says, Jose Valentino, so amazing and such a kind, humble person. Oran Etkin, who's watching, a great saxophone player, he says, right now, I can't wait to hear it, talking about your forthcoming music. Shambu says, you're the ambassador of optimism.
Nice.
And I mean, just goes on and on. So you should probably check out all these comments that are coming in.
I will. But shout out to Oran. Oran and I are buddies, and we've collaborated on some stuff. So Oran, we got to talk.
You heard it, Oran. Hope you're doing. And Oran, we want you on the show. So hit me, drop me a line. I'll get you on the show.
Nice. All right. I'll this is a song that's going to become a book. So I'll send you off with this because we've gotten into some heavy stuff today. So this is more of a fun one. It's just called "How Many Squirrels Are in the World?" And imagine this: when we're out in front of 500 or 1,000 kids, I'll show you the chorus, and then you guys can get into it. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? And so what you would do when we have a whole audience, we've got them going, how many squirrels are in the world? Then so they turn their hands. There you go. You got it. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Clap your hands. Come on. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels, you got it, Kabir, are in the world? I asked my mom, I asked my dad, but nobody knows. It makes me mad. I'm looking up, everybody look up. I'm looking down, look down. I'm counting squirrels all over town, and I won't stop until I'm done, until I've counted everyone. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I asked my teacher, ask Mr. G. I don't know, but nobody knows. It's up to me. Well, I see 3 in the oak tree. I see 4 by my front door. Could that be 8 along the gate? I see 13 behind the screen. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I'm counting squirrels everywhere I go, and someday soon I'm gonna know how many squirrels are in the world. How many squirrels are in the world?
Yeah, I love that song.
Nice crowd, nice crowd.
Yeah. Hey, settle down. I said settle down. All right, that's enough. Thank you. All right, awesome. Beautiful work, man. So a couple of questions that people are asking. One on LinkedIn wants to know what kind of guitar do you play?
Oh, I got a lot of guitars. What I'm playing here is a Martin OM28. This is an instrument I use all the time in the studio. On the road, I typically bring out a Collings OM1 and a Collings OM2. But hold on. Since we're right here, I'll show you a couple different ones.
This is show and tell.
Don't go anywhere.
Show and tell.
This is my National Steel. So better if it's in tune, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So that's great for slide and sort of twangy Americana stuff.
Mm-hmm. Camila's freaking out because we didn't sound check any of this stuff.
Oh man, next time.
I love it.
This is my Gretsch.
Awesome.
So probably can't hear this that well. And then I've got my nylon string sitting right here
The
for a lot
nylon's
of the
my favorite.
ballads and the bossa
Yeah.
nova. My telly. It could go on and on.
What was the first guitar that you got?
The first guitar that I got was a Yamaha six string, steel string,
You still have
and
it?
I don't have that guitar.
Yeah.
And the first electric guitar I got was a Martin Electric, which it turns out like that was something Martin tried and it didn't go well for them, but it was cool. I gave that
Yeah.
to my cousin, so I don't have any of the instruments that I grew up with, but
I hear. Well, thanks so much, for sharing your musical instruments with us. You have quite a not a closet, but you have so many. I have like one bass, and I just travel with that whenever I can. But it's
wait
nice
a
to
second.
connect.
I saw a video with you once with like 50 basses. I thought they were all
Oh,
yours.
that was yeah. That's what I call bass heaven. That was
Okay.
is a music store in New York. Those basses are expensive, like those upright basses. They're
Yeah.
really expensive. But look, man, thanks for joining us. You're really just it's a blessing to have you. And what we're going through right now, I think we need more of your music. We need more of your literature. So I'm glad you're
Oh man.
it's your place, churning it out. And we're into. It's so great to see sort of where you work. People
You
see
you cut out for a second, Kabir. Say that again.
sort of behind the scenes.
Man, I lost you for a second.
I said thank. I was just saying thank for. I was saying all the all. I was giving you a lot of praise, so that's why I'm lacking probably. I was just giving you a lot of compliments, saying you're an incredible person, and we need more of your music in the world.
Oh, well, listen, thank you so much. It's wonderful to connect. I really appreciate you taking the initiative with all of us at this time. And I know for me, like just when you reached out, it made me feel more connected and knowing that I was going to be able to do this today. So thank you and stay safe and best to you and your family and everyone out there.
Thank you, Ben. Just two quick items. I want to give a shout out to Camilo and Sandra. Check out their website. They're incredible engineers. And if you're a musician at home that needs mixing, mastering, hit them up at the website down there. And just top class professionals. And then tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, we have the great Karen Allison, jazz singer. She'll be singing a few selections. And it's a real treat to. I think this might be her first live show. So we're trying to bring a lot of these jazz musicians into the streaming world. And we had a great show last night with Veronica Swift. So tune in tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. And remember, every night, 10 p.m. Eastern, consistently, just tune in here and we'll try to bring you the best music that I've come across. Have a good afternoon and see you in a few hours.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care.